Hello, dear friends. I have a heavy tale to share today, one that's been haunting me for months. But before I dive into the story, I want to ask for a small favor. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. It helps get these stories out into the world. And if you're listening from somewhere special, drop a comment with your city or state. I'd love to know where my voice is traveling to. Now, let me tell you how everything changed and how a mother's heart can sometimes break beyond repair. It started on a typical afternoon when I felt that strange nagging sensation in my chest. You know the one, the kind you get when something's not right, even if there's no reason to worry. I'd been trying to reach my son Jason for days, but he didn't pick up, not once. And Vicky, my daughter-in-law, she hadn't returned my calls either. You could say I was a mother with a sixth sense. A gift, some might call it. Others might say it's just the result of years of experience. But I wasn't feeling the joy of flying down to visit them. No, something was pulling at me. Something told me to go, and go quickly. So I packed my bags and hopped on a plane without a second thought, trusting my instincts. It's a strange thing, the way a mother's love can make you drop everything for your children, even when they don't deserve it. But at that moment, I didn't care about anything but getting to them. I landed in Charleston, the air thick with the humid southern heat, different from the cool, crisp mornings back in Ohio. I grabbed my bag, slung over my shoulder, and made my way to the cab. Inside the bag were 2 jars of my homemade blackberry jam, the kind Jason loved when he was younger, the kind that brought a little warmth to a heart full of worry. The ride to their place felt like a dream. The city zoomed by, and yet I felt like time was dragging. I tried calling Jason again, but the phone just rang and rang, unanswered. It wasn't like him at all. I've always believed that mothers know when something's wrong. That was the cold weight pressing down on me. I felt it deep in my gut, in the pit of my stomach. And as I got closer to their building, I knew. Deep down, I had to brace myself for something ugly. The building stood before me, an imposing old structure, just like something out of the movies. Brick walls, high ceilings, a spacious courtyard. It should have felt like home, but the heavy weight in my chest only grew heavier. 3 years ago, I bought this condo for them, Jason and Vicky. I wanted to give them everything I never had. A good start. No worries about rent, no struggling. I thought I could guarantee their happiness. How wrong I was. When I stepped off the elevator, the door to their apartment was ajar. Not wide open, but just enough to make my heart skip. It wasn't how they left it. I pushed the door open with my shoulder and stepped inside. The smell hit me immediately. It wasn't the scent of fresh flowers or baked cookies like Vicky used to make. No, it was stale, like old smoke and something sour. My son had promised me he'd quit smoking. He swore on his life. Yet here I was, standing in the middle of the mess they'd made of their lives. Boots and jackets were tossed on the floor. The kitchen? Piles of dirty dishes, pizza crusts, and half-empty bottles of liquor. There were bills lying untouched on the table, unpaid, unopened. But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part was the small bottle of pills, Vicky's heart medication, untouched for who knows how long. I stood there for a moment staring at it, feeling that cold anger rise in my chest. How could they have let this happen? Just then, a voice came from behind me, raspy and weak. "Who are you looking for?" I turned, startled, and found an elderly woman standing in the doorway, her eyes filled with pity. "I'm Jason's mother," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside, everything was falling apart. She didn't say much, just shook her head and sighed. "I don't know where your boy is, but Vicky, well, the ambulance took her a couple of days ago. She wasn't conscious. I'm sorry." I didn't know what to do. My legs felt like lead as I stumbled out of their apartment. My only thought was the hospital. I needed to see my daughter-in-law, needed to know if she was okay. The drive to the hospital felt like an eternity. The city whizzed by, but my mind was far away, replaying the images of that filthy apartment. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to walk into something worse than I could imagine. I finally arrived at City General Hospital, the ER lobby humming with the usual chaos. The smells of antiseptic and despair filled the air as I walked through the waiting room, trying to stay focused. My hands were shaking as I asked for Vicky by name. They found her in the ICU. No surprise there. When I arrived at the unit, I could already hear the steady beep of machines, the heart monitor ticking like a countdown to something inevitable. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't the sight of her. Vicky lay there in that sterile white bed, hooked to machines, her body so frail it seemed like she could break apart if someone whispered too loudly. She was hooked to a ventilator, and her face, once full of life and warmth, was now drained, pale. Her cheekbones were so sharp it looked like they might tear through her skin. She had always been small, but this was something else. This was sickness that had been allowed to fester in silence. She's been through a lot, the doctor told me. Her body's weak from extreme dehydration, and her pneumonia is severe. If the neighbors hadn't called 911 when they did, well, I don't think she would have made it. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I had always known something was wrong, but hearing it from the doctor hit me harder than I could have ever prepared for. "Where's Jason?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The doctor didn't answer right away. His eyes dropped, and I knew. I knew the answer before he said it. "He's not here," Dr. Harris finally admitted. "He hasn't been here. As far as we know, he's out, living his life." Those words stung, but they also fueled something dark within me. How could a man who claimed to love her, who had taken vows to cherish and protect, leave her to suffer alone like this? I couldn't fathom it. I asked the doctor to leave me alone for a while, needing to collect my thoughts. I couldn't breathe in that room. It felt suffocating, as if the very air around me was thickening with betrayal. I stepped outside into the cold evening air, hoping it would cool the fire that had started to burn inside me. But before I could even get a full breath in, I heard it, the roar of an engine, a car screeching down the street. I looked up, squinting through the glow of the streetlights, and there it was, the luxury SUV, the one I had bought for Jason only a month ago. A birthday gift, I told him, for his future, for his family. I watched as my son sped by in that car, laughing, his arm hanging out the window, two young women with him. They were laughing too, as though nothing in the world could touch them. Jason didn't look my way, didn't even glance in the direction of the hospital where his wife was fighting for her life. The car roared past me, tires screeching, blasting club music that vibrated the ground beneath my feet. My heart sank. How could he? How could he be so callous? Then my phone buzzed. The text message lit up the screen, and I felt like I'd been slapped. "Hey, Ma, can't talk. I'm at the hospital with Vicky right now. It's really serious. The doctors are fighting. I haven't left her side. Pray for us." The words blurred in front of my eyes. He wanted me to pray for him? For them? The same man who had just driven by, laughing, not a care in the world? I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, and my hands clenched into fists at my sides. I wanted to scream, to call him and let him know how much he disgusted me. But I didn't. Screaming is a sign of weakness, and I was no longer weak. Instead, I did something far colder. Without a second thought, I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The operator asked. I want to report a stolen vehicle, I said, my voice steady, unwavering. I could hear the words leave my mouth, each one falling like a stone. A blue Escalade. It's my son's. License plate number, it's moving down Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, heading toward the entertainment district. An unauthorized male is behind the wheel. The operator didn't hesitate. Do you know the suspect? No, I replied, the words colder than I ever meant them to be. It's my son, but he's not the one driving. I suspect he's intoxicated. The words felt like a hammer coming down, but I felt no remorse. Not for him. Not anymore. He'd crossed a line, and now I was going to make him face the consequences. The hospital lobby was quiet when I walked back in, a strange calm hanging in the air. I couldn't get Jason's face out of my mind, laughing, so full of himself, so oblivious to the pain he had caused. And there I was, in a hospital waiting room, while his wife was dying alone. I took a seat, my fingers cold against the plastic cup the receptionist had handed me earlier. I knew I had done what needed to be done. The car was reported stolen, the police would handle it. But there was something else I needed to take care of. I stared at my phone, still vibrating with messages from Jason. I couldn't bear to look at them anymore, so I turned it off and slid it back into my bag. There was no time for his excuses, his empty apologies. I had made up my mind. The truth was clear now, and it was time to act. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see what was in front of me. I thought about Vicky, about the girl I had watched my son marry. She'd been so full of hope, so willing to make a life with him. But now, here she was, lying in a coma, alone and neglected. How had it come to this? The door to the ICU opened, and I looked up to see a nurse walking out, shaking her head. My heart sank. I wanted to ask her how Vicky was doing, but I knew the answer. It was too late for that. I had to move faster. I had to make sure everything was in place before Jason could try to make it right, before he could worm his way back into Vicky's life. I walked out to the parking lot and called Odora, my old friend, the one I trusted to handle things when I couldn't make mistakes. "Odora, it's time," I said. My voice was flat, but underneath I could feel the fire building again. "I need you to get everything ready. The deed for the condo. It's time to transfer it to Vicky. I'm done waiting." There was a pause on the other end. Odora knew me well enough to understand. "Are you sure about this, Olia? This is a big step. Once it's done, there's no going back." "I'm sure," I replied. "Jason has done enough. He doesn't deserve anything anymore. Not from me, not from Vicky. It's time for her to have control." I hung up, feeling a weight lift off my chest. It was done. There was no going back now. I walked back into the hospital, a new sense of purpose driving every step of mine. Jason was out there, somewhere, making a fool of himself, but I was here, taking care of what mattered. Vicky needed me. She needed to know she wasn't alone, that someone still cared. But before I could make it back to her room, the phone buzzed in my pocket again, another unknown number. My pulse quickened. It was probably Jason, or worse, one of his friends. "Hello? Miss Vance, this is Officer Bradshaw. We've detained a vehicle matching your description," the voice on the other end said, his tone stern. "The driver is a male named Jason Vance. He's currently resisting arrest." I took a deep breath, my heart thudding in my chest. "I understand," I said calmly, my voice steady as a judge's gavel. "I don't know that man. You can release him, but make sure he understands the full extent of his actions." There was a brief silence before the officer replied. "We will, Miss Vance. We'll handle it." I hung up, feeling the rush of clarity settle over me. Jason had no idea what was coming. He thought he was untouchable, that he could always get away with everything. But today, I was taking control of the situation. I knew I had to act fast. Time was running out. As I turned back to the ICU, I steeled myself for what was next. I wasn't just protecting Vicky anymore. I was taking back everything that Jason had stolen from her, and from me. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls, paperwork, and decisions made in cold, calculated silence. I'd already spoken to Odora again. The deed was done. The condo was now Vicky's. She was safe from Jason's grasp. But there was more to be done. Jason's arrest had made its way through the grapevine faster than I could have imagined. I knew he was furious. His text messages were flooding my phone, one after another, each one more desperate than the last. But I didn't respond. Not a word. There was nothing left to say. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I sat quietly in the hospital's waiting room, pretending to read a book, but my mind wasn't on the pages. It was on Vicky, on the woman who had been betrayed not just by her husband, but by the very person who should have protected her mother-in-law. I had failed her. I couldn't change that, but I could make sure she never had to suffer again. I would do everything in my power to make sure Jason couldn't hurt her any longer. The beep of the heart monitor in Vicky's room was the only sound that cut through the heavy silence. I had spent hours by her side, talking to her, even though she couldn't respond. I told her about the weather back home, about the pies we'd baked together when she was better. I told her about the new curtains I'd picked out for the apartment, the one that now belonged to her. I spoke of everything and nothing, just so she could hear my voice, just so she wouldn't feel so alone. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Jason. It was Odora. The paperwork is done. Vicky is officially the owner. I've also secured the power of attorney for all property matters. You're all set. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The last of Jason's influence was slipping away bit by bit, and I felt that familiar cold sense of finality settle over me. It was over. He had no more hold on any of us. I stood up from my chair and made my way to Vicky's room. The nurse at the station gave me a nod, as though she recognized the quiet strength I had now adopted. When I entered the room, I found Vicky still unconscious, her fragile body surrounded by a maze of tubes and machines. But something in the room had shifted. I could feel it in the air. There was a promise of hope now, a whisper of life in the silence. I sat beside her bed, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. The weight in my chest felt lighter now, like a burden I'd been carrying for so long was finally being put down. I could see the faintest signs of improvement. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. But then, just as I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could make it through this, the door to her room flew open, and there he was, Jason. He staggered in, disheveled, his face red with anger. His eyes were wild, but there was something else there too. Fear. He saw me sitting by Vicky's bedside, and for a moment he froze. His mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came out. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice as cold as the air in that sterile room. He looked like a man who had been beaten down by life. He limped slightly as he approached, and the arrogance that had once radiated from him was gone, replaced with something more desperate, more pathetic. "Mama, where's the car? I need it. I'm sorry. Please, you've got to help me. The guys are expecting me. I can't be stuck here. I need the car back." I didn't move. I didn't even flinch. I'd heard enough. "You've lost the car," I said, my words biting. "You've lost the condo. You've lost everything. And you've lost me. Do you hear that, Jason? I'm done. You've crossed a line that can never be undone. Not just with Vicky, but with me. I won't help you anymore." He didn't understand. He couldn't. His eyes widened in disbelief, and he took a step forward as if trying to close the distance between us. "You can't do this. I'm your son. I'm your blood. You owe me, Mom. You owe me everything. You can't just take it all away." I stood up, feeling the power in my stance. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me anymore, not like he had for years. I looked him straight in the eyes, and my voice was steady and cold. "You owe me, Jason. You owe me everything, and you're not going to get away with what you've done. Not anymore. I've already signed over everything to Vicky. The condo, the car, it's all hers now. And you have nothing." I watched as the realization hit him like a ton of bricks. His face drained of color, and for the first time in my life, I saw true fear in his eyes. Fear that he would have to face the consequences of his actions. Fear that there was no one left to bail him out. He didn't say anything more. He just turned on his heel and left, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, but this time it wasn't fear. It was the strange exhilaration of finally standing up for what was right. For the first time in years, I felt free. The days that followed felt like I was walking through a fog, one that I could neither escape nor find clarity within. I spent most of my time at the hospital, watching over Vicky as her body slowly started to fight back. The doctors said she was improving, but I knew it would take time. Her body had been through too much, and the emotional toll was far greater than I'd realized. I kept my distance from Jason. He didn't try to contact me again, not directly at least. Instead, his calls went unanswered, his messages unread. He didn't know it yet, but he had been cut off. From me, from Vicky, from everything he had once taken for granted. And even as I tried to focus on Vicky's recovery, I couldn't help but wonder how long it would take before he'd come crawling back. He wasn't the type to accept defeat easily. I knew what he was capable of, and unfortunately, I had a sinking feeling that the worst was still yet to come. 2 days later, I got the call I was half expecting. It wasn't from Jason, but from the police. "Ms. Vance, we've got a situation," Officer Bradshaw said, his voice tight. "Your son has been spotted again. He's making threats, talking about taking legal action, claiming he was wronged, that the car was his, that you've taken everything from him." I felt the blood drain from my face, but I wasn't surprised. The entitlement in his voice, the way he always believed everything belonged to him, it was all coming to a head. "Where is he now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "He's at the apartment. He's trying to get in. The locks have been changed, but we're keeping an eye on him. We just wanted to let you know." I knew this would happen. The apartment, the condo, I had given it all to Vicky, but Jason wasn't about to let go of his hold on it. He thought he was invincible, that he could simply take whatever he wanted, but not anymore. "I'll be there shortly," I said, hanging up without another word. The drive felt like it took forever. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, my thoughts racing with what I might face. When I arrived at the building, I could see a few police cars parked in front. I walked past them, my eyes scanning the crowd for Jason. I didn't see him at first, but then I spotted him, standing by the entrance, his head hanging low. He looked a mess, as if the last few days had completely drained him. He saw me, and for a brief moment, his eyes filled with something. Guilt, shame, maybe even a bit of fear. But then it was gone. His posture straightened, and he took a step forward, as if trying to regain some of his old confidence. "Mama," he said, his voice strained, "you don't understand. You've taken everything from me. This apartment, the condo, everything. I'm your son. I deserve better than this. You can't just—" "Stop right there," I interrupted, cutting him off before he could finish his tired speech. "You've had everything handed to you. Every time you made a mistake, I bailed you out. And look where we are now. You've run out of chances, Jason. There's no more me to save you." He flinched at the words. They hit him harder than any punch I could have thrown. His eyes darted around as if looking for an escape or a way to manipulate me again. But he wasn't going to win this time. Not this time. Vicky is the owner of that condo now. It's her life, her future. You're not welcome there anymore. You're not welcome in our lives anymore. Do you understand that? His face contorted with a mix of anger and disbelief. "You can't do this," he spat, his hands clenched into fists. "I'm your son. You can't just throw me out like this." "I've already made my decision," I said, standing my ground. "You don't get to play the victim anymore, Jason. You're a grown man, and you've made your choices. I'm not going to let you destroy the only thing of value left, Vicky's chance at peace." He shook his head, pacing now, the desperation building in his movements. "This isn't over, you hear me?" he yelled, his voice cracking with frustration. "I'll fight you for everything you've taken. You'll regret this." The words sounded hollow, meaningless. He was just trying to scare me into backing down, but I wasn't going to fold. Not anymore. I turned to walk away, but Jason's voice stopped me. You think you've won? You think you've cut me out? Well, I've got news for you. This isn't the end. You haven't seen the last of me. I didn't turn back to face him. Instead, I kept walking, heading toward the exit. As I stepped outside, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. He could threaten me all he wanted, but he was out of options, and I wasn't going to give him any more of my time or energy. Jason had no idea what real consequences looked like, but he was about to find out. The days that followed Jason's outburst were eerily quiet. I spent every moment I could with Vicky, helping her recover, talking to her, filling her world with something more than just the beeping of machines. She was making progress, slowly but surely, but every time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the image of Jason's face. The anger, the desperation, the way he seemed to think he could come back into our lives as if nothing had happened. But he had made his choice, and I had made mine. It was late one evening when I got another call from Eudora. I didn't answer immediately, my mind still racing with thoughts of Jason, but when I saw her name on the screen, I knew it was time to face the reality of what was coming next. I picked up the phone, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "Eudora, what's going on?" "Oil, I think you need to come down here," she said. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the edge of concern in it. "There's something you need to see." I didn't question her. I knew that when Eudora spoke like that, something had shifted. I grabbed my coat, made sure Vicky was comfortable, and headed out the door. When I arrived at Eudora's office, I found her waiting for me in her usual spot, behind her desk, the faintest signs of worry creasing her brow. She didn't waste time. She slid a folder across the desk, and I opened it without hesitation. Inside, there was a photocopy of a bank statement, a loan application. From Jason. My stomach dropped when I saw it. "What's this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jason applied for a payday loan. "A large one," Eudora said, her fingers tapping on the paper. "The collateral he provided? The condo. Your condo, Oil. He was trying to borrow a significant amount of money, and he listed that apartment as his property." I felt the room spin around me. Jason, the same man who had tried to manipulate me for years, was now trying to steal what was rightfully Vicky's. He had no shame, no boundaries. I looked up at Eudora, my heart pounding. Is this real?" "It's as real as it gets," she replied, her tone sharp. "And if he couldn't pay it back, which we both know he wouldn't have, he was planning to lose the property. That apartment would have been gone." A deep anger began to rise within me. I had already taken everything from him, the condo, the car, but now I had the proof, the absolute betrayal. It wasn't just about money, it was about his complete disregard for his wife, for me, for everything we had done for him. I looked at the loan application again. Jason had tried to mortgage the very apartment Vicky now owned, the one I had fought for, the one I had given her. I slammed the folder down onto the desk, my fists clenched. "This is the last straw," I muttered. "I'm not letting him destroy her anymore." Eudora leaned back in her chair, watching me with a mixture of sympathy and resolve. "So what's the next move?" "The next move?" I repeated, my voice firming. "We make sure he never gets a chance to hurt her again. He's going to learn the hard way that his games are over." I stood up, my decision made. I wasn't going to let him walk away from this, not after everything he'd done. I turned to Eudora, my eyes hardening with determination. "I need everything you've got, the documents, the proof. We're going to make sure Jason doesn't even have the chance to try and weasel his way back into her life." Eudora nodded, a small smile of approval curling on her lips. "You got it, Oil. I'll make sure everything is airtight." As I left her office that evening, I could feel the weight of what I was about to do, but there was no other choice. Jason had made his bed. Now it was time for him to lie in it. The morning came too soon, and yet I welcomed it with open arms. The final steps were in place. Jason's betrayal was laid out in black and white, and there was no way for him to escape what was coming. I had everything I needed. The law was on my side, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of regret or guilt. I felt clear. I felt strong. I spent the morning preparing everything, finalizing the legal documents, confirming Vicky's transfer of ownership, and making sure the apartment was secure. I had taken every precaution, from installing new locks to setting up security systems. There was no room for Jason to slip through. By mid-afternoon, I was back at the hospital. Vicky was resting, her recovery continuing at a slow but steady pace. The silence in her room was broken only by the steady beep of the machines, but in that silence, I could feel the promise of a new beginning, for her, for me, and for the life I would no longer let Jason destroy. The phone buzzed in my pocket. A message. I opened it, expecting it to be another of Jason's desperate attempts to manipulate me, but it wasn't from him. It was from Odora. "I've got the paperwork ready. The property is legally transferred to Vicky. It's done. The apartment is hers. And the loan? It's already being contested. You won this one, Oil." I smiled at the message, a sense of relief washing over me. Jason had lost. He had no idea what was coming. But as I set my phone down and turned to Vicky, I knew I couldn't let up. Not now, not ever. Jason would come for her again. He would try to tear her down, but this time I would be there, standing strong, a mother's love unbreakable. Just as I was about to sit back down beside Vicky's bed, I heard a commotion outside in the hallway. My heart stopped for a moment and I stood up quickly, the fear rising in my chest. I stepped out into the corridor, and there he was. Jason. He was standing there, outside the ICU, his eyes wild and desperate. His clothes were rumpled, his hair unkempt. He looked like he'd just crawled out of some nightmare. And yet, there he was, clinging to his last shred of pride. I walked towards him, my gaze steady and unwavering. "What do you want, Jason?" I asked, my voice calm, but there was a dangerous edge to it. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at me, his face contorting with a mix of rage and confusion. "I need to talk to Vicky. She's my wife. She'll understand," he stammered. I shook my head, my lips curling into a hard smile. "Not anymore. Vicky is free from you, Jason. You've done enough damage." "Don't do this," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I know I messed up. Just give me a chance. I'll change. I'll fix everything." I took a step closer to him, not out of fear, but out of resolve. "You've had your chance. You wasted it. You're not welcome here. You're not welcome in her life anymore." He flinched as if my words had physically struck him. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I saw the truth. Jason wasn't capable of change. He didn't want redemption. He just wanted control. "You can't do this," he said, his voice shaky now, his posture slumping. "I'm your son. You can't just throw me away." "I'm done throwing you anything," I replied. "I've thrown away all my love, all my patience, all my energy trying to save you. But you don't want saving, Jason. You just want to destroy, and I won't let you destroy her anymore." He took a step back, his eyes narrowing, and for a moment I saw the mask of arrogance return. "You think you've won? This isn't over. I'll make sure it's not. You'll regret this, Mama. You'll regret throwing me out." I didn't flinch. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me shaken. Instead, I simply turned around and walked back into Vicky's room, closing the door behind me. Jason stood there, outside, screaming something incoherent, but I didn't hear him. The door shut, and with it, the chapter on my son's manipulation was closed. The damage had been done, but I wasn't going to let it define me. I wasn't going to let it define Vicky. And now, dear listeners, here we are. The battle has ended, and the truth has been exposed. I cut ties with my son, not out of hate, but out of love. The love that Vicky deserved, the love she had been denied. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. It was the only way to stop the cycle of destruction that Jason had brought into our lives. As I sit here today, I don't regret a single step I took. Sometimes love isn't enough to fix someone. Sometimes you have to let them fall and let them learn the consequences of their actions. Do you think I was right to do what I did? Was it too much to take from my own son? Or do you believe I made the right choice to protect Vicky and myself from a man who never learned to value what was right in front of him? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mabel's Stories for more tales like this. Until next time, stay strong, and remember, sometimes cutting off the ones you love is the only way to save them.